It was a quiet town. People knew each other. Shops closed early. The streets were calm. No one expected trouble. The night it happened was cold. The sky was clear. The air felt sharp. Many people were at home. Some lights were still on in the main street, casting long, lonely shadows on the empty pavement. The silence itself felt like a presence, a heavy blanket over the sleeping community. Everything feels exactly as it should, until it is not. At 2:10 a.m., the alarm went off at Kemp's Hardware. The piercing sound cut through the stillness. The store sat on a corner. It had a big plate glass window. Inside, the safe stood behind the counter. The safe was old but heavy, dark green, scarred with the marks of time. It held cash and important papers. For the Kemp family, it had been a lifeline for generations. The sound of that alarm was more than a warning. It was a violation. Mrs. Kemp ran to the store from her house. Her husband lived in the small apartment next door. He was the first to see the scene. The window was cracked, a spider web of fractures from a single impact near the lock. The door hung open. Papers were scattered like fallen leaves, and the safe was gone. Neighbors watched, wrapped in coats and robes. Sirens neared. Red and blue lights washed over faces. The quiet town was awake, and it was afraid. The crime was not just a theft, it was a wound in the heart of the community. By dawn, the town had a story. The news spread quickly, from one neighbor to the next. People talked in hushed tones over coffee on their way to work. Some said it was a simple robbery, a crime of opportunity by outsiders. Others feared something worse, something more personal. The Kemp family felt a profound shock. They had run the store for 20 years, a legacy passed down from Mr. Kemp's father. The safe held not just the week's cash, but something more. Inside that heavy steel box were old receipts, a family letter from a grandparent, a small, worn box of photographs. Those things mattered. They were the physical memories of a family's history, intertwined with the history of the store. The cash could be replaced, insured, earned again over time. But the letter, the images of smiling faces from decades past, those were irreplaceable. Detective Rosa Navarro led the case. She was calm and exact. She moved with a deliberate pace, listened more than she spoke, her eyes taking in every detail. She walked the store, stepping around scattered papers, touching the scuffed floor where the safe had sat, studying the window's broken edge, taking meticulous notes. Detective Navarro focused on the young man Aaron. She moved closer. The other onlookers faded into the background.
A van? She repeated, her tone encouraging. Can you describe it?
It was dark, maybe a deep blue, black, nondescript. A standard work van with no distinguishing marks. The kind you see 100 times a day and never notice.
But one detail stuck with him. He remembered the sound. It wasn't just the engine idling. He heard a scraping noise, metal on metal. He thought it was late-night construction or a delivery. Now he knew. The Kemp's safe being dragged across the pavement and hoisted into the back of that van. The sound echoed in his mind with a new, sinister meaning. It was the sound of his town's peace being stolen.
Which way did it go?
Toward the highway, he said. It turned left at the end of Main Street and headed for the on-ramp.
This was crucial. It meant the thieves were likely not local. They used the highway to make a quick escape, melting into the wider world. Navarro thanked Aaron, ordered a canvas, checked every camera. One at the end of Main Street caught a shadow, grainy, but a dark van turning toward the highway at 2:17 a.m. It was a lead. The grainy footage was just enough. An officer enhanced it, frame by painstaking frame. In one fleeting moment, the license plate became partially visible, blurry, but a few characters could be deciphered. They ran dozens of combinations. After several dead ends, they got a match. The plate linked to a rental agency in the city, about an hour away. Records were clear. A dark blue Ford Transit, rented for 24 hours. The man who signed the papers, Marco Ortiz. His license listed an address in the next county. Detective Navarro drove straight there. A modest complex, peeling paint, crowded lots, a world away from Kemp's town. They knocked on 2B. A tired, confused man answered. It was Marco Ortiz. He said he worked nights as a security guard, said he'd been home watching TV. He had friends in the city, but had not been out. He knew nothing about a hardware store or a stolen safe. With reluctant consent, a search found nothing. No tools, no large cash, no papers. As they left, a neighbor stopped them. Marco's friend Luis kept strange hours, always looking for quick cash, with white, jagged scars on the backs of his hands, the kind from sharp metal. A tiny observation. It would matter later. Back in town, the forensics team finished. Prints dusted, glass collected, every inch photographed. By the smashed window, they found a small, partial shoe print left in a patch of damp soil at the foundation. It was a child's size, or a small adult's shoe. Odd for a crime requiring brute force. The tread had a distinct mud pattern, a clay not common nearby. They cast the impression, preserved faint ridges, and sent it to the state lab. They knew it was a long shot. Shoe prints are common and often lead nowhere. Still, they waited. Days later, a match to a specific work boot brand with a patented slip-resistant tread, primarily sold to construction and demolition crews. They checked local sites, active and recently completed. A gruff manager remembered a temp who fit the small size, often taking late-night breaks in his car near the perimeter. He noted a strange jacket with a city bus logo. He had a crew photo from weeks earlier. Zoomed in, the man looked like Marco's friend, Luis. That was the connection. Another piece fell into place from an unexpected source, the bank across the street. Their external camera covered the ATM and sidewalk. At 3:05 a.m., about an hour after the alarm, someone appeared on camera. They weren't using the ATM. They tried a store credit card and a small portable reader, the name Kemp's Hardware visible for a moment. They tried to withdraw cash, not realizing it was a credit card, not a debit card. A clumsy, amateur mistake. High-definition frames showed the hand. A small silver ring on the index finger, etched with a tiny star. Distinctive. Navarro's team released a notice, describing the ring and asking for tips. A neighbor of Marco called. His cousin Luis wore a ring just like that. Proud of it. The pattern solidified. The van to Marco. A shoe print to a construction worker resembling Luis. Scars on hands. And now, the ring on camera linked to Luis. Circumstantial evidence built into a compelling narrative. Luis's name became the headline. It was time to find him. Detectives found Luis at a 24-hour diner. He did not resist. He seemed to expect them. He said he had nothing to do with any hardware store theft. Said he was home, sleeping, his voice barely a whisper. At the station, his story frayed. Late shifts but no time card. No supervisor to name. He denied owning a silver ring, but a faint pale mark on his index finger told otherwise. They asked for his phone. After a pause, he handed it over. Texts to Marco appeared. Short, coded. They spoke about the job, the drop. Timestamps matched the robbery. Faced with records, Marco changed his story. He rented the van, drove to town, parked near Kemp's. He insisted he left before anything happened. Got cold feet. Needed the money. Thought it was about tools, not a whole safe. Luis broke down. He was scared. He had a young child to feed. He'd lost his construction job. He made a bad choice. Piece by piece he told it. 3 men timed the robbery, watched the store for a week, brought a heavy-duty trolley, pried the frame, smashed glass quietly, dragged the safe through the opening with desperate strength. They moved the safe to an old warehouse by the river, a place no one would hear them. Under a single bare bulb, they used a crowbar and a sledgehammer to force it open. Inside was the cash, more than they expected. There were papers and a small box of photographs, tossed aside. Luis said he only wanted the cash, and didn't understand why the others cared about the papers. One man, Javier, kept them, reading the pages with intense care, as if he'd found something bigger than money. Detectives recovered the discarded items, the damaged photo box, and the papers. They were old invoices and a thick, leather-bound ledger. Names and amounts dating back decades. Some prominent people, some just regular citizens. Long debts, quiet loans, informal payments, a hidden map of obligations. When Javier learned the others were in custody, he fled. Police tracked his phone, caught him at a bus station minutes before departure. The old ledger folded in his coat. He admitted everything. He wanted to sell it. to use it as leverage, to blackmail those with debts. He had a list of potential buyers. The day of the trial arrived. The courthouse was filled. People who knew the Kemps sat shoulder to shoulder, supportive, curious. Mr. Kemp wore his best coat, looking older than months ago. Mrs. Kemp held a small plastic bag of recovered photographs, creased, water-damaged, but faces still visible. Prosecutors laid out the case. Van rental with Marco's signature. The bank video paused on Luis's silver ring. The ledger and its extortion value. The texts planning the job. Defense argued Luis was a pawn and Javier the sole mastermind. But evidence is like a map. It shows all paths. The crime led to all three, each playing a role. After only a few hours, the jury returned, guilty on all counts. The judge's voice was firm. Javier received the longest term, the architect, planning to weaponize the town's history. Marco got a shorter sentence, prior record, but he stayed in the van and cooperated to a degree. Luis received the most lenient. He confessed fully, showed remorse, helped recover the photos. The court ordered a shorter term, followed by long probation, community service, and counseling. Not forgiveness, but a chance to rebuild a life he nearly threw away. In the aftermath, the Kemp family received a small measure of comfort. The precious photographs came back, not perfect, but home. The town rallied. A local glazier replaced the window for free. Friends and customers took up a collection to replace the stolen cash. The mayor spoke softly at a town meeting. It wasn't about crime. It was about trust and community. Detective Navarro kept a copy of the ledger in the case file. The original stayed with the court. She privately warned the town council, review small contracts, be more transparent. The case revealed more than a single crime. Old debts and secrets can fester. Vulnerabilities predators like Javier exploit. A lesson in institutional memory. People began talking more, not less. They watched for unfamiliar vans at night. They checked on elderly neighbors. The Kemps installed a camera, bought a safe bolted to the floor, and added a motion-activated floodlight that bathed the corner in bright light. They were healing. They would not be caught unprepared again. The town felt safer, but not the same. This is how one cold night changed a town. It wasn't about a single stolen safe. It was about the invisible links in a chain of trust, the high cost of long-kept secrets, and how a few honest people worked to piece that chain back together. Trust, once cracked, never sets quite the same. A quiet scar remained.